Hey guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Will. Today, we're going to be talking about Colleen Ballinger. I'm sure most of y'all have heard all about it by now, but just in case you haven't, I'm going to summarize for you exactly what has happened with Colleen Ballinger. So most recently, she's been known in the media because a lot of her younger fans have been stepping up and talking about how Colleen has groomed them. So most of the allegations against Colleen started when a man named Adam McIntyre posted a video talking about his experience dealing with Colleen as a young child and how she literally groomed him and used him for her content and ditched him when a joke didn't land as well as Colleen had wanted it to, and then just completely ignored him and shut him out. A lot of other things that Colleen has done in her past have started to come up to the surface, such as literally being in a group chat with her young fans and having conversations with them that she really shouldn't be having. I'll link Adam McIntyre's video and channel in the description down below because he can really describe what happened to him and other people like him. But to summarize it, Colleen has been accused and proven to have groomed her young fans. And to make matters worse, when these things about Colleen started coming out, Colleen didn't sit down and address the situation properly, or not even like most YouTubers would address their apologies with fake tears and empty promises. Colleen decided to sing a little song. And a new development is Colleen decided to not only post the song as an apology, but upload it onto Apple Music so that people can stream it, and she made the song copyrightable so that people can't criticize her online without getting taken down for copyright. Oh boy, what a lovely little mess of her life she's made. I genuinely think that Colleen thinks like this whole thing is funny and like her song is blowing up because people find it like so relatable and cool, and like she's parodizing it, and in a way it's taking away from the victims who have spoken up about this and making it seem like everything that they've admitted to is nothing more than a joke to Colleen. It is so deceptive of Colleen to make the apology a song and make it copyrightable because it prevents people from talking about the issues at hand. The video itself was already 10 minutes long, which meant that she can monetize it and make money off of it, and now she's just publishing her song as a funny little joke. So ultimately, Colleen is deciding to make a profit out of other people's pain, and it is truly disgusting. But this video isn't going to be focusing on the newer things that Colleen has done. This video is going to be focusing on her past. As this whole Colleen Ballinger situation is becoming really big, a lot of her fans, who were way younger at the time, of course, have been coming forward with their stories and experiences dealing with Colleen, all at her live shows, some of the things she said and done, and excerpts from her books and her Netflix show Haters Back Off that have been problematic, as well as just moments on her channel and her life in general that have been problematic, and it's intense. A lot of the problems with Colleen Ballinger include, but aren't limited to, mocking people who might have intellectual disabilities, mocking people of color, mocking people in the LGBTQ+ community. There's been way too many times where she's like made a coming out joke or a reference implying that, you know, she wouldn't want to be gay. I know there was even a page in one of her books where she's like, I'm not a Lebanese, or like she's made little comments being like, I will not be with a girl, like comments implying that she should be with a man. On top of that, she likes to make jokes about some pretty heavy topics. So let's get to talking about her, shall we? So Colleen Ballinger, better known as her internet persona Miranda Sings, was one of the original YouTubers who started off when YouTube was becoming a really big thing. And in her prime, the character of Miranda Sings was incredibly popular and people loved her. I remember being a young kid watching Miranda Sings, and it was a really exciting time to try and differentiate Miranda and Colleen, because for a while I was genuinely convinced that they were two different people who had this like feud with each other, and that Miranda just really hated Colleen because they vaguely look like each other, or like they worked together in some way. But for a while I genuinely believed that Colleen and Miranda were two different people. I always personally preferred Colleen over Miranda. Like even when I realized they were two people, I mainly focused on Colleen, and she was mainly the one that I idolized. Like, this is not coming from somebody who just has a lot of pent-up hatred about Miranda or Colleen. It's coming from someone who was a fan. I saved up and bought both of Miranda's books when they came out. I owned merch. I attended one of her live shows in 2019, and it was one of the most exciting things ever at the time. Like, I genuinely idolized and looked up to Colleen so much, and I feel like one thing that people really loved about Colleen is she was so different from her character Miranda. On the surface, Colleen seemed to be like this super cool feminist, and she was a really supportive figure. And I really enjoyed watching her vlogs and, you know, getting little glimpses into her life and just seeing the person she was becoming. But then this Miranda Sings character would say the most heinous and disturbing things, and she would say terrible things about very different groups of people. And you know, I feel like for a while a lot of people overlooked it because they're like, oh, it's a character, it's satirical, she doesn't really mean these things. But at a certain point, when does the joke stop being a joke? At some point, it's not a joke anymore, and it's just who you are as a person. And she's just taking this character and she's taking all of these bad traits about herself, putting them into one character, and justifying it by saying that the whole character is meant to be a joke.
Do you ever mean what she's saying?
Yes, all the time. There's a lot of times where in character I'll say something so cruel or, you know, something I'm thinking but I would never actually say as myself, and it's very liberating to be able to say things that I'm thinking.
Can I give
So from what I've gathered, Miranda is obviously supposed to be a satirical character, and she's meant to sort of like mock the people who believe that they're better than everybody else and mock the people who just put themselves up on a pedestal.
How do you come up with this character? How does this come about?
I was just goofing around in college, and I was imitating girls that I went to school with. I know, that sounds mean, and it is. But there are these girls I went to school with who were just kind of snooty and rude. So they'd be like, if you want to sing high, you have to lift your eyebrows really high. If you want to sing low, lift your head back. Like they give the worst advice.
Which is something I feel like could have worked for her character if she had executed it properly. I don't hate every single thing that Colleen has done as Miranda, I just hate the majority of it. And one thing that I didn't even know until recently is that I'm pretty sure Miranda Sings is intended to be a child. She's intended to be a high school aged character, at least on the Netflix show Haters Back Off. She was in high school and like she was being homeschooled, but she is meant to be younger than Colleen. Colleen is in her 30s. Miranda is meant to be a teenager, or at least was at one point in time, which makes the things that this teenage aged character does all the more disturbing. One main issue with the character, of course, is that she just seems to be mocking people who might have intellectual disabilities of different sorts. Miranda is supposed to have this sort of childlike innocence, but then the innocence that she has is used to just make a ton of dirty and just sexual jokes.
Never have I ever been in handcuffs. Miranda, okay, we all know you're lying. You have handcuffs all over your room. They're right here, you have them everywhere. Ew, those aren't for me.
Like, she'll spell something wrong. Like, one big one I find is every time she writes the word cum, as in C-O-M-E, she has to spell it C-U-M. And little things like that. She'll spell something wrong, or she'll say something like with a sexual undertone, and then obviously it's like, oh, I don't know what that means, like I'm innocent. It's not just one little comment here or there though. A large part of her character is focused on these sexual jokes, and she's just a very inherently sexual character. Like, I know even like Disney movies are known to slip in a subtle sexual joke that will just go right over the kids' heads. And that's fine, I don't have a problem with that. It's funny to notice them when you grow up, but there are things I'll look back on and I'll be like, yeah, I had no idea what the fuck that meant when I was 6. The things that Colleen does are just so, like, it's not subtle. And even if a kid doesn't fully understand what Colleen is trying to say in these jokes, I feel like it's something that would even make kids uncomfortable and it'd open a can of worms that shouldn't be opened yet, or it's just to the point where it's like, why are these jokes being made and why are they so frequent? As someone who was diagnosed with autism growing up, a lot of times I just felt like I was always the joke. I still do all the time. There's things that people do that still always make it apparent that the joke is on me. People laughing when I don't understand certain things, or being sarcastic when they know I won't pick it up, or like mocking the way that I do things because I do it differently than some people, or mocking the fact that I get overstimulated. I remember one of my jobs purposely being sarcastic all the time because they knew I didn't get it, and then they'd sit there and laugh, or they'd sit there and be like, good job, and then be like, we are being sarcastic, or like they start laughing. And looking at the Miranda Sings character, sometimes it really does seem as though she's just making a mockery out of people like me. There are people who exhibit some of the traits that Miranda does, and then the character just makes it seem like a big mockery. Just watching it, I never really feel good about myself seeing the way that she portrays someone who potentially has some sort of something. And then on top of that, there's just the obvious sexualization of her character, who, as I previously pointed out, is intended to be a very young character. The character, especially on like her Netflix show, I remember like rewatching clips of it, has this huge like obsession with oral jokes and penises in general, and anything she can turn into a joke about like oral sex or dealing with penises, she will. You know, like sucking on the froze toes, little popsicle things, like eating the little like sausages, putting icing on a stupid little like sticky bun.
Alright.
Oh, the cream shot out of my package. Sorry.
Well, that's alright. It landed on my buns. I like them extra sticky.
Anything she can turn into something sexual, she will. I remember from her live show I attended in 2019, one of the first things she said was like how she was pregnant, because at the time she was pregnant with her first child, Flynn, and you know, one of her first comments was, "There's a little penis inside of me."
I just found out recently that I'm having a little boy, which is so exciting. There's a tiny little penis in there.
And I just feel like, given everything else she said, that's kind of wrong. I also like to note all the things in her books that have sexual undertones to them when they were intended to be for children. First of all, blatant sexual positions. Like, obviously there's one. Any reference to, you know, anything sexual, she's going to take it. And the little like references to porn constantly as well, when a lot of her content is supposed to be for children. Despite the much too frequent penis jokes that are part of her character though, a large part of her character is also slut-shaming girls who don't dress exactly like her. For example, if I was wearing this in front of Miranda Sings, she would call me a slut and tell me to cover my chesticle crack and tell me to wear a button down and sweatpants like herself. And the whole character also pretty much preaches about the fact that she's a virgin. When she was pregnant, you know, it was the whole Virgin Miranda thing. She preaches the ideologies of virginity and how sex is a sin and it's this horrible thing, and then shames anybody who dresses a certain way. And it might be obvious that it's a joke to someone my age, but it might not go over as well for someone a little bit younger than me. Even if people know that it's supposed to be a joke, I feel like it's still not a good one. Like, me and my friends oftentimes make jokes with each other where we're like, don't drink, like we're people of God, or like I did this whole thing in high school where we were talking about how fucked up our dress code was. So like one day we went and picked out outfits from a thrift store that were biblically accurate to what women were supposed to wear. But it's another issue entirely when all you're doing is calling people who dress this way sluts, and then even bringing your young teenaged girl fans on stage to slut shame them in front of a huge group of people. It's disgusting. Even if it's intended to be a joke, I know that I would feel pretty uncomfortable if I was just standing up on stage in an outfit and everybody was staring at me while this 30-year-old woman was calling me a slut. Like, even if it's a joke, like at some point it's not a joke. One main issue I find with like school dress codes and stuff is how it seems to just be sexualizing, you know, minors, because a lot of the whole thing is like you have to cover up and be modest. It sort of sexualizes children and teaches people that like women are objects and something that should be looked at, and it's our job to cover, and it's women's jobs to cover up for the sake of men. And I think that's a bullshit ideology. And then the character just kind of takes that and works with that as well, and I think it's disgusting. But while she slut shames young girls, she also brings her young male fans on the stage and sexualizes them to be a joke. There's been many occasions where she like jokes about young fans being her bae or like trying to find a boyfriend. There's been several times where she's like had young boys like reach into her pants and like eat her stupid little like cheese balls, and then obviously she turns that into a sexual joke, and chances are the young boy might not even realize exactly what's supposed to be so funny about that.
Hold on, I got a snack.
With a cheese ball? I'd love one. I can't believe I'm reaching in there right now.
In a way, it's also inadvertently feeding into people's minds that boys are just these like sex deviants who are supposed to be okay with any and all sexual advances, while girls are just supposed to be these perfect little covered up people. And it's disturbing, to say the least. Especially knowing that Colleen has 2 young sons now. It's just disgusting to me the things that she would do with young boys on stage. Literally, also she preaches the ideologies of like using men for money and you know, just being really, really mean to them. And, you know, I'd be lying if I said I never made a joke about getting rid of men, but there's a place and a time for those jokes, and I don't think it's in a book intended for children. She makes jokes about hating men, using men for money, and then she also just is really like predatory about the way she talks about finding a bae. On her channel, I know for a while she searched for baes, and she always like stalks men to get into a relationship, and the relationships in question are always super toxic. They always result in Miranda just getting jealous, usually lusting after somebody who has no interest in her in general, you know, then getting jealous when they're with somebody else, which is a disgusting joke to make. I feel like a lot of people overlook it for a long time because she is a female, but if the tables were turned and it was a male making these jokes about like a woman, I think the jokes would have been stopped a long time ago. But I just really don't think the joke of constantly chasing after somebody who doesn't have an interest in you is very funny at all, and I don't like the fact that she for a long time made this a huge part of who she was either. Oh, like here's getting revenge, and it includes things like spit in his drink, kick a bush in his yard, put hair in his mouth, kiss something in front of him, like things that are like violating, like never fuck with someone's drinks or like do random things like that. Things like that I don't think are funny. Like some of the revenge things, sure, can be funny. Catch a fly and let it go in his bedroom, sure, that can be funny. And like here, levels of relationships, stranger, mine, bae, husband, servant, and prisoner, and then widow are like the bases in a relationship, and of course it has to involve the uncle. It's just disgusting to me. Which brings me to the next topic, which I think is one of the worst things the character has done ever, which is all of these sexual assault jokes that she likes to put in with her character. Her book, her channel, her show, everything is filled with references about her uncle, and all of them are, you know, sexual references about him, you know, implying that he just lusts after her. It also is gross to me that she's supposed to be a childlike character, and then she still has these things being done to this childlike character.
You're my mother, I am my uncle in this scene, okay? So you need to look more pregnant in this scene. So actually, you know, let's not stick it in all the way because you're about to give birth. Scene.
Oh, I'm so pregnant.
Oh, how are you doing, dear sister-in-law? I'm so excited for you to give birth to this baby. I love little girls.
I've known people who have dealt with these types of issues in real life, and it's so traumatizing and disgusting, the things that people have gone through, and then she just takes it and makes a huge joke out of it. And I don't know why she thought that it was something that she should ever joke about. Now, I know Colleen liked to use the excuse that her content is marked PG-13 and it's up to each parent to decide what their kid can or can't watch, which I feel like is, I agree with to a certain degree. But the thing about Miranda Sings' content is it can be a hit or a miss. Some of it can be family friendly and fine and funny, but then some of it can also be like really, really disturbing, and suddenly a joke can just sneak up on you. And I don't think a parent is really going to sit there and watch every single second of the show if it seems like it's going to be fine. And also it might be easier to block a 5-year-old and like really closely monitor what they're watching, but it might be harder if the kid is 9-10 years old to watch every single little detail of what they're doing. I don't think it's really fair to step in and say, oh, like, it's the parent's job to protect you from this, like, so it's not my fault if your child is uncomfortable, if your child literally feels violated. I feel like a lot of the content she produces isn't even okay for people who are like 13, going through puberty even if they're old enough to understand that it's satire, even if they're old enough to get some of the jokes. I feel like the way it's done is still just gross, and it disturbs a lot of different people. Like 12-13-year-olds are still young and impressionable, and the show might give them the wrong idea of what's okay and what's not okay. Also, the Netflix show Haters Backed Off is marked as PG, and so it could come up with PG rated shows, and so a little kid who has, you know, that set, a parent might see the show and the kids actually click on it and then be stuck trying to explain that. I still think it's up to creators to take some responsibility for their fans themselves. It's one thing if your content isn't geared for children and none of your videos are really geared for children, so you don't like market it as children's content and a child stumbles upon it, that's not your fault. Colleen knew that her content was being largely consumed by children. She's at her live shows, she sees how many of her fans are 18 and under. She brought children up on stage, knowing that children are viewing her content. She could have shifted the content when she realized who was mostly consuming it and made it more child-friendly, left out more of the sexual innuendos or made them more subtle and less gross. But she didn't. She could have cut out the sexual assault jokes, but she didn't. She didn't switch up her content based off of who was viewing it. I believe she knew who was consuming her content and just decided to keep going with it anyways, just being like, oh, well, it's a parent's job to, you know, make sure their kids aren't watching me, which I feel like is kind of a disgusting thing to say. You know, at the time, it's possible the little boys invited on stage didn't feel violated at the time and they were just excited to be pulled up on stage with someone that they admired. But then they look back on it a few years later and they're like, what was happening to me? Because we loved her, a lot of things we let slide because we trusted her, we admired her, and so we watched her content anyways, and she knew that. She took advantage of a lot of her fans. She exploited them to get what she wanted, and then sort of blamed her fans when things went wrong or when fans were uncomfortable with what she created. The icing on top of the cake is that she didn't even say sorry. She didn't address the song properly. She made a song and she made a profit and refused to even admit the fact that she did anything wrong. It's those kind of things that are disgusting and disturbing to me and really just showcase Colleen for who she really is, which is a disgusting human being. So that is going to be all for that video. That is my thoughts on Colleen and the whole situation. I think it's disgusting and disturbing how so many people looked up to her for so many years and then she's just going to sit there and not take any accountability for anything. It's definitely dramatic, but she's been problematic for a long time. She's just catching the backlash for it now. That's all for this video. I'll see you guys in my next. Peace.